Some people are incredibly good at reading you. They notice when your mood changes. They remember what makes you insecure. They know when you need reassurance, and somehow they always seem to know exactly what to say. At first, that can feel like empathy, like, finally, someone actually gets me. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if understanding your feelings doesn't make someone kinder? What if it simply makes them better at influencing you? We usually treat empathy like evidence that someone cares. If they understand why you're hurting, surely they don't want to hurt you, right? Not necessarily, because understanding someone's emotions and caring about what happens to them aren't the same thing. Someone can notice exactly what you're feeling and use that understanding to help you, or they can use the same information to get what they want. Same information, very different intention. Psychologists often separate different parts of empathy. One is cognitive empathy. Basically, I can understand what you're feeling. Another involves emotionally responding to another person's experience. And then there's something even more important, whether you actually care what happens to them. These things often work together, but they don't always. Research on darker personality traits shows that the relationship with empathy is complicated, so saying, manipulative people have no empathy is too simple. The better question isn't, can this person read me? It's, what do they do with what they read? Think about someone who knows you well. They know what embarrasses you, what makes you jealous, what makes you feel guilty, what makes you afraid they'll leave. But here's what matters. None of that information is automatically dangerous. People who genuinely love you learn these things too. Closeness naturally teaches people where you're sensitive. The difference appears later, because knowledge about you can become care, or it can become leverage. If someone knows exactly what makes you panic, they also know exactly which button would create that panic. This is one of the hardest versions to recognize. You tell someone, when you do that, it really hurts me. They listen. They don't dismiss you. They may even explain your feelings back to you perfectly, and you think, finally, they understand. But then, a week later, they do the same thing again and again. That's when you need to notice the difference between understanding and respect. Understanding your feelings is not the same as respecting them. So don't only watch how well someone explains your emotions, watch what they change after understanding them. Maybe you told them you're scared you're not good enough. Maybe you admitted you're terrified of being abandoned. Maybe you shared something you've never told many people. At the time, they seemed safe. Then months later, during an argument, there it is, the thing you trusted them with. It turned into a joke, a threat, a guilt trip, or one perfectly chosen sentence designed to hit where it hurts most. That doesn't diagnose somebody with a personality disorder, but it does tell you something about the relationship, because healthy closeness makes your private information safer. Manipulation turns it into ammunition. This is what makes emotional insight so powerful. Being understood feels good. Someone remembers the tiny thing you mentioned 3 weeks ago. They notice you're upset before you say anything. They seem to know exactly what you need to hear. That can create trust very quickly. And in a healthy relationship, that's beautiful. But emotional knowledge also creates influence, because once someone understands what you want, what you fear, and what you need to hear, they have a map. The question is, are they using that map to take care of you or to control where you go? This is why trying to diagnose someone as a narcissist, a Machiavellian, a dark empath, or anything else usually isn't the most useful test. Try something simpler. When they understand how you feel, what happens next? Do they respect your boundary when it inconveniences them? Can they hear no without making you feel guilty for saying it? When you explain that something hurts, does their behavior eventually change? And most importantly, does knowing you make them more careful with you, or simply better at getting around your defenses? Because someone who cares about your weak spots usually tries not to press them. And this is why the person who hurts you emotionally won't always look cold. Cold people can actually be easier to recognize. The more confusing person may be warm, funny, attentive, supportive. They may genuinely understand you. That's why warmth alone isn't the test. Emotional intelligence isn't the test. Even empathy by itself isn't the test. The pattern that matters is, does knowing you make them more caring or more powerful? If you're unsure about someone, don't test how well they can read you. Watch what happens when they don't get what they want. Say no to something small. Disagree, take your time, change your mind, set a reasonable boundary, then watch. A safe person might be disappointed, they might disagree, they might even be frustrated. But your no can still remain no. Because the real test of empathy isn't how well someone understands your feelings. It's what they do when your feelings get in the way of what they want. The right person doesn't use knowing you to become better at controlling you. They use knowing you to become more careful with you.